Last week, I preached a sermon about being above average Christians. How many of you remember that? Know what the sermon was about? Okay. All right. Well, I said everybody is above average in something. Do you remember that? Some of you are above average in this, and some of you are above average in that. And I mentioned that some of the students are above average students. Some of you are above average golfers or gardeners. Some of you are above average parents, and some of you are above average friends to others. And so I asked the question, is it possible for all of us in this room to become above average Christians? And do you remember what the answer was? Yes, you remember, or yes is the answer? Yes to both. That's right. Yeah, okay. Very good. The answer was and is yes, and will always continue to be yes. And so we looked at the life of an Old Testament personality to discover ways in which that could happen. We looked briefly at the life of a man named Jabez. We learned two things from Jabez. First, we learned that he had ambition. He was focused on becoming better than average. I like how some of the versions of the Bible have said it. They have said it in this way: "Oh God, bless me indeed." And that word indeed is punctuated with exclamation points. Indeed, Lord, as if he was saying, "Oh God, make this big. Bless me in a big way." He wanted, empowered by God, to accomplish something grand. He had a dream. He had a goal. He had set his course on becoming excellent in something, and he wanted that something to be godly. Second thing we learned about Jabez was this: not only did he have a faith in God, but he had a deep and growing faith in God. He had a deep and vibrant faith in the God who makes things happen. He had this growing faith where he knew that if he prayed to God, that God would answer. I think the key word in that, as I said last week, is growing. His faith wasn't stagnant. He chose to be proactive in developing a strong faith life or faith walk with God. Well, that's what I preached last week. I received a lot of comments and some positive feedback about that. So I thought that maybe what we needed to do was spend another week on that concept of what it is to become above average Christians. So that's what the rest of the sermon is about. But let me say this at the beginning. Okay? Let me say this. When I... Oh. Hey, that's the best baby picture they had of me. What can I say? Okay. When I was born and started to grow up in this great big world of ours, I had early on run into a difficult situation. That difficult situation was my parents. You heard me right, my parents. My parents expected me to be an above average individual. Now, I really didn't want that for myself. By the time I was 5 years old, I had come to realize that if I was just average, most people would ignore me. Most people just look past me. There was no way I wanted to be above average, because above average meant that you had to do those special extra things. I kind of liked being just an average kid. I just enjoyed kind of having nobody pay much attention to me. At the age of 5, I was just going to hang out and not be much of anything. But no, my parents had other plans, what they thought were better plans for me. For example, when I started school, I had to be an A and a B student. C's got you nowhere. So I needed to be an A and a B student. And I can remember my mother working really hard to be sure that all of the assignments that I had from school got completed in an excellent way. I mean, I can remember her standing over my shoulder many a night as I was finishing up homework to be sure that that homework was done in a very good way, because average was not good enough. And then there's my dad. Oh my God, my dad was a perfectionist. He was good in so many things. And it wasn't because he was a natural at it. He just loved to work at those kinds of things. Be it his garden, or be it his award-winning homemade Christmas decorations, or be it the woodworking projects that came out of his shop. My dad needed to be excellent, and he was teaching us that also. If you're going to do something, do it right, and do it right the first time. That was my dad's motto. And so he taught that to us kids in many different ways over and over and over again. So here I discovered I was trapped in an average body trying to be above average. Now, how many of you have ever experienced the same thing? You're an average person, but others out there are wanting you to be above average, right? If it wasn't your parents, maybe it was some school teachers. If it wasn't school teachers, maybe it was the coach out on the playing field. If it wasn't the coach, maybe it was one of your siblings who always thought something should be a competition. And so you had to prove yourself over and over and over again to them. You know what I mean? If you have never experienced that, and how many of you have never experienced that? Not too many? Good. Because I was going to say, if you have never experienced that, then I think you've missed out on something. Okay? Now listen to this. There is an exponential joy to living that occurs when we are encouraged to be more than average. There is an awesome sense of accomplishment when we discover that we can be above average and become successful in it. I want you to take a moment right now and think about a way in which you are above average. Okay. Remember what I said. Everybody is above average in something. I want you to really take a moment right now. We're just going to pause in this sermon, and I want you to think about a way in which you are above average. Go ahead, start thinking about it. Put it in the frontal lobe of your brain. I want it there for a few moments, okay? How are you above average? How are you? Are you excellent in something? Maybe it's gardening like my dad, or maybe it's homemaking, or maybe it's cooking. Maybe you're a great barbecue chef. What is it in which you are above average? One definition of above average is you're better at it than me. You got it there? You got it? You know what it is? You got it planted in your brain? How does it make you feel? How does it make you feel to think about those things that you are above average in? It should bring to your heart a sense of joy and a sense of accomplishment. I can remember the day when I took ownership of my own becoming above average. I remember that day. Up until then, I was driven by parents or teachers. But then something happened in my life, and I chose to own being above average myself. And here's what happened. One day, I met this cute little blonde ninth grader. And I decided I wanted to date her. The only problem was I was a shy, average eighth grader. And she didn't even know I existed. Her name was Peggy, by the way. I just thought maybe I'd mention that. Okay. And so, for the next few years, I decided that I was going to work at moving from being average Earl to super Earl. Because average Earl wasn't being noticed by Peggy, but maybe Super Earl would. So I worked hard at that. I mean, there were a lot of boys out there that wanted to date Peggy. And so I had to become better than average in order to be noticed by her. Some of those boys were some of my best friends. So I needed to be smarter than them. I had to outwit them. I had to be one step ahead of them. I had to be better than them in order to achieve my goal, which was dating Peggy. There you go. It took a long time for me to go from average Earl to Super Earl. But in the end, I think it worked. Being above average has its rewards. How do I know that? Because of all those guys, I'm the guy that's been married to her for 40 years. Peggy's hiding behind that post back there. Okay. Well, moving on. The point I'm trying to make is this. The world needs all of us to be above average in some things. And more importantly than that, the Church of Jesus Christ needs for us to become above average Christians. So once again, I ask that question. Is it possible for all of us in this room to become above average Christians? And the answer to that is yes. Yes, indeed. So let's turn to today's scriptures to discover a couple of other lessons concerning how we can do that. Okay? First, let's look at what the Apostle Paul wrote in the book of Ephesians. He makes this point, and I quote, "I pray that from God's glorious, unlimited resources, He will empower you with inner strength through His Spirit." Now let's pause and stop there for a moment. Do you see that word empower? God wants to empower you. What does that mean to you? And then look at some other words there. The words unlimited resources. What do those unlimited resources look like in your life? You bring those together and you see that God is seeking to empower you through His unlimited resources. If you embrace that, what does that look like in your life? Now, look at the next sentence. The next sentence says this: "Now all glory to God, who is able through His mighty power at work within us to accomplish infinitely more than we might ask or think." Do you notice those words? A mighty power at work within us. Look at those two sentences deeply. Don't just race by the scriptures. Hear the words of those scriptures. As a matter of fact, they're printed in your bulletin. Take your bulletin home with you today and reflect upon those two sentences. They are some of the most powerful in the Bible. Look at those two sentences deeply, and what you discover is God has unlimited resources. God can do a mighty work. God can accomplish within you more than you might ask or think is possible. Wow, that can happen in you. It is God's desire for you to live an above average life. It is His plan that you will choose to be an above average Christian. And the best part of it is that He is the one who holds those unlimited resources that can enable you to do that. He is the one who supplies the mighty power. And that mighty power is already at work in you. In other words, to be an above average Christian, all we need to do is to partner with God and to give Him permission to accomplish within us more than we might ever ask or think is possible. What will it take to help us learn how we can accomplish that in our lives? Just this. Once we partner with Christ in that goal, He becomes our mentor and provides the resources we need for that to happen. There is no better guide in all of life than Jesus Christ Himself. So how about you? Are you willing for Jesus to be the mentor and guide of your life, to be a part of your daily journey? If we ask for His guidance to rest upon our lives, if we seek His presence every day in all that we do and all that we could possibly be, then a movement will begin within us that will enable us to live life above average. Let me ask you the same question I asked you last week. Do you want that for yourself? I pray that you do, because that's what Jesus wants for you also.